What was your fuck this shit I'm out moment? I was unemployed and had a job interview for a cable installer position. The position advertised for $20 an hour, 40 hours a week, and benefits, so it seemed like a pretty good deal. I get to the interview and find out it's actually 2 interviews. A group interview followed by one-on-one interviews with the hiring manager. In the group interview, explains that the position was actually minimum wage and commission. He also explains that we need to supply our own tools. He then tells us how they assign jobs, and we have no choice over which ones we get. Right before the end of the group interview, one of the other guys asks if there were any other expenses we were responsible for, and Hong tells us that we had to pay for our own gas, tires, and repairs on our Ascend company van. I look out in the parking lot and saw all the vans look like 20-year-old, clapped-out pieces of crap. As soon as Hong went back to his office, I left. I'm a middle school teacher, and it's also worth mentioning that I'm a very petite woman, and most of my students are bigger than me. Many years ago, when I was considered one of the young and pretty teachers, I was walking down the hall. An 8th grade boy slapped me on the ass and mentioned my car's make and model, implying that he was going to wait for me in the parking lot. I immediately went to my principal, who told me that reporting the incident would reflect poorly on me, and I don't want a complaint like that in my file. I put in my resignation from that particular school the next day. The more I mention it, the more I realize that many teachers have similar experiences. Some young woman and an old lady were arguing about stolen underwear in our communal laundry room. The young woman called for her cracked-out boyfriend, who came running in with a gun drawn, screaming bloody murder. Nope, right out. Then moved out that weekend. Not really so much a fuck this shit moment as confirmation of fuck this shit. Sir, software engineer role at a leading telecom user. One of 3 new devs to join the team. Issues every night, sometimes all night. Huge pressure to work 60-hour weeks with totally unrealistic goals. After a few months, I realized this wasn't just a crunch period. This was going to be all the time. His example, getting a call to come back to the office for an emergency and handing his 2-year-old daughter off to a neighbor he didn't know so he could come work all night. Yeah, fuck that. Then my last day, they pulls the team together and absolutely rips into this guy for taking 20 minutes to support an issue, since he was driving home at the time and couldn't log in immediately when called. That shit. Recently, I was hired by a company to be a foreman. My job was laid out in my interview as follows: plant, maintenance and welding. I would run a crew of 4 guys and do odd jobs at a potato plant 10 miles from my house. This is what I have done for other various companies for the last 15 years. After taking the job, they asked me to help another foreman doing the same thing at a different potato plant about 80 miles away. I agreed, as it was for a few days. Fast forward 3 weeks. I am still driving 160 miles a day, and we have been doing concrete and asphalt prep for a week, not my vacation. The boss casually mentioned at about 2 in the afternoon that we had to finish a particular part of the project before we left, and that we would be there at least till 8 o'clock. I told him I couldn't work late on short notice because I had plans, and still had to drive home. He said, if you don't pick up the pace, you will be leaving earlier than that. I told him I agreed, and since this wasn't the job I was hired for, that I was done. He replied with "see ya," and I said probably not. I was hired as a temp. On day 91, I was told that they in fact didn't have to hire me after 90 days, and they were gonna keep me on as a temp. I clocked out for lunch and never went back. I was working as a postie. Normally, when a postie gets sick, the other posties have to cover his route. There were 7 of us, so it was annoying, but not too bad. I'd been there for a couple of years and had covered other people's sick days several times. Anyway, I got really sick. The sickest I'd been in my life up till that time. Had the flu, but it wound up making me look grey. Finally went back to work. I had 3 days off. Piles of mail were waiting for me. I don't know if they delivered any of it Maybe they did, but there were huge piles waiting for me, and I was still sick. I only went back in because I was worried about the workload on them. I gave my notice, finished the week, and then quit. Some promoter literally gave me $80 to go into his Vegas strip club with my friends. Said he would throw in the limo and VIP package if we tipped the driver because his other reservation canceled when we got there. We got different color wristbands than other people and were told we could only leave their taxi when we left. That was our only option. One friend tried to leave, and the bouncer wouldn't let him out. He came back and told us what was up. Nothing was adding up, so we booked it out of the far exit and down the street. That was how I got paid $80 to go strip club. Pretty sure we were going to get robbed when we left and would probably have been drunk. I worked at Produce Market when I was in college. I really needed the job. I literally had empty cabinets and only one shelf of food in the fridge on a regular basis. I'd been working weekday evenings only for a couple of months, but picked up a Saturday shift. I was helping a customer, and the owner walked up and interrupted our conversation. "Is that your yellow car in parking lot?" Me ears her with the most demeaning tone. On weekends, our parking lot is reserved for customers only. If you value a job, you will go punch out. Move your car to the lot across the street and never park in the lot again. I was astonished. I had full-time jobs every summer since I was 50. I picked up holiday jobs. I had a lot of working experience. I had never been talked to like this by any coworker or boss before, particularly in front of a customer. I told her I was not aware of the parking rules, since I always worked weekdays, took off my apron, handed it to her and said I would be punching out. I quit. I told the customer I was sorry I was not able to finish helping him and walked out. I really needed the job, but was so pissed off I couldn't. My supervisor called me that afternoon and tried to get me to come back, but I just couldn't. I was about 17 and lived in a rural area, used to hitchhike everywhere. One day I'm in the back of a car, two guys up front. They're talking kinder quiet. After a minute or two I hear one say, "Look, but this time we'll go somewhere else." And he looks in the mirror. I looked away out the window, proper shitting my pants. As we went through a village, we had to stop at a junction, and I blurted something about a friend living nearby, and I opened the door and ran. Probably nothing in it, but I still get chills remembering.